Good day, citizens of the free world, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea. I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in to the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. Our mission, searching for beneficial disruption in healthcare from emerging technologies. My guest today is Danielle Siarri. Danielle has a Master's of Science and Nursing Informatics degree and is a registered nurse with experience ranging from both hospital settings, particularly emergency departments, transplant, and trauma to case managers in a corporate environment. She's very active on social media. She tweets a lot. She blogs a lot. She travels a lot. She interviews people a lot. I ran across Danielle's social media path last year, and I put it on my list of things to do at HIMSS this year to meet her. So I met her, and I wanted to pick Danielle's brain for some time, and I finally tracked her down. Danielle, welcome to the Tate Chronicles.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's good to be here, and it's great to have a conversation with you.
I've really been looking forward to it. Well, first, let me kind of ask you a general question. You're involved in healthcare delivery, human to human, but you're also very involved in technical aspects, informatics, and the leading edge of a lot of these new, hopefully disruptive technologies. How'd that come about, this overlap?
The way it kind of happened, I had always been into computers. I grew up half in the South, and my mother was a graduate of LSU, and grew up half in Sunnyvale, Cupertino, so we always kind of had computers. And so it was kind of easy for me when I went into healthcare. And as I progressed in my career, there were a lot of hospitals that weren't using computers at the time. So when they started using them, it was just second nature to me. So it just kind of became something I really enjoyed. And as my career progressed, I realized there was a lot more going on, and I kind of needed to discover, and someone told me about HIMSS, and I went to an event, and I said, okay, this is for me. I have to figure this out, and I went to New Orleans. And then after that, I said, hey, I need to go back and, find out what I don't know. And that's when I got my master's at University of Pittsburgh in nursing informatics. And so learning about project management and learning about a whole host of different things, promotion. And I decided, I need to create something new. So I created my site, InnoNurse, which to me, because I've been traveling all these countries, I knew what I wanted to and what I was doing didn't translate. So by coding my site and cataloging, hashtagging it, it would take me, explaining what is nursing informatics, and I could show people what's nursing informatics. And then it kind of took off from there, and I started branding it, and people really liked my logo, my symbol, my bag, and people wanted to kind of, like you, have a conversation. And it kind of continues.
Just as a side, Danielle, you mentioned going to HIMSS at New Orleans. I was probably at that same one. If it was the first big conference in New Orleans post-Katrina. Is that the one you're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was something. Yeah, that was something to be there during that time. Well,
and people were so kind and so gracious. It was worth it.
I know it, absolutely. HIMSS can really be overwhelming. You need to figure out pretty early what to ignore and what to pay attention to. Well, you travel quite a bit. Yeah. Now, I know since HIMSS this year, when you and I talked briefly, you've been, I guess, in Europe. Where have you been going? What type of conferences have you been going to? What have you been doing out there, Danielle?
I just been on the go. I went to a HIMSS Europe event. I was social media ambassador in a town called Sitges. It's about 20 kilometers outside west of Barcelona. So people from all over, not just the EU, they actually had a Korean delegation there as well. There was some Americans, Canadians. It's quite a pretty diverse group that was there. So I was there for that event where I learned a lot, kind of expanded my knowledge about blockchain. They had a huge AI event that was like standing room only. Of course, Hal was there. Just a lot of people, some people from the HIMSS Asia Pac group summit were there. So it was really nice to see and hear what people had to say and learn from all those people. Then I went to Paris Healthcare Week my French isn't that great, but I still wanted to go and see kind of what was happening. And it was really amazing, especially for the size of the town of Paris. There's 30,000 people at the event. And I liked it because it had every aspect of healthcare, from the technology to, how do you build a hospital? What are the elements that go involved? So I got to meet an architect who has a magazine, and we had a conversation, and actually put me in this last article, talking about how, engaging, nurses into healthcare when it comes to the whole scope of even building the hospitals and how we can be, a benefit. Then follow with doing a great event that was at the UNESCO building in Paris. So it was my first time doing a UNESCO event, and it was almost like reverse innovation. So they had companies, they had people from not just from Europe but also from Africa, so from French-speaking parts of Africa, some people from India, just really getting back to basics when it comes to healthcare, and then going back to the basics and then bridging out. So there was a doctor from L'Oreal explaining about products that women are using and, maybe getting cancer from them that they normally don't see in Paris, these types of cancers. But there's like some particular creams for people bleaching their skin and things like that. So even veterinarians really dealing on a global scale. If 5 birds die or 10 birds die in this particular area, he might get called out to figure out, why is this happening?
Sure.
So to see healthcare go the whole gambit of life. So that was really interesting. I said that was my last 3 European events for this spring.
One thing that you can probably give me a little bit of insight into, Danielle, is it's pretty easy being based in the U.S. or I don't know. Are you in Canada or the U.S.? Where are you based?
Today I'm in Canada, but I'm U.S. based.
Okay. We can be really ethnocentric as far as healthcare, and we know how healthcare technology tries to work here, but we often have no idea how it works in France or in Estonia or in places in Africa. And so healthcare technology, it can really promote good outcomes. It can get in the way of good outcomes. It can kind of do all kind of things if the technology gets too far ahead of actually taking care of people. And becomes almost a burden in some ways. Where do you see the U.S. In terms of, vis-a-vis Europe or other countries as far as how we're using technology?
Every country's different. I've been to about 30. I could say elements for each one that's different. Like a lot of people talk about blockchain in the U.S., and I can see why it works in a country like Estonia when I was there, because there's a lot of trust, and it's kind of weaved in the backbone and they thought of every element. Like when we talk about healthcare in the U.S., no one ever mentions about the schools. Kids spend most of the time at schools, and how's their healthcare at school, where we used to have, like, say, one school nurse when I grew up in the South or in California, and now one nurse might be for a whole district. And even parents taking, like, you're going on the field trip. How do you manage these kids' care if someone gets an allergic reaction, things like that? So I see in Estonia where they've thought of all the elements, and it's almost like if you think blockchain is like the spine of the book, and the hospital, the care out in the community, all that's thought of is like chapters in the book. So that's where we kind of, I would say, U.S. lack, and that kind of comes to trust because we kind of like our anonymity a little bit in the U.S. I got to see AR and VR for the first time in Norway before it kind of came out in the U.S., and how they integrate in the skilled nursing facility to kind of get the patients that maybe be there like a month or so to get their minds out, to get them to be able to get beyond the bed, or using it for PT and OT, competing with their therapists. So I think that, to me, was fascinating, something that we don't do. And the way they kind of, and people always talk about the economics of it, and the way they do it in Norway, they'll partner with another, we'll say like a city, basically, or a canton, and then the government will give them money if they'll partner together to create something together. So it's not just one area having one item by itself. Let's see. France, I always thought it was fascinating that the doctor comes to your house for a small fee to check on you. And so to me, that's always been fascinating. Where we used to do that years ago in the U.S., and even I worked in Vermont for a while, and there was one doctor where I worked. He actually did home visits which I always thought was fascinating. So I would say that's really different there. Spain's really getting into like wearables and devices. They really changed their economy quite a bit from when I first went. I went before everything fell, during and after, and they really have a huge health tech scene where a lot of the young people are just making their own businesses and making their own way. So I see a lot with diabetes care, a lot with gamification in healthcare, a lot with women's health going on there as far as like mHealth. So I would say the big difference is there's trust, and people are motivated in different European countries because they really want something new. They want something for their community, and they just work at it. They just keep at it, and they just work to make it happen. So I would say there's little differences. Some things, I think we do a little more when it comes to like safety. Little things like sidewalks and wheelchairs that were ahead, but it's also older cultures there. You'd almost have to rebuild the city, for wheelchairs.
Sure.
So every place has its own like really great thing they're doing. So what I try and do is feature and highlight those great things and share my research with the world at large.
I read everything that you write, and so I appreciate that. You also have a fairly active YouTube channel, don't you, where you're interviewing folks?
Yeah, I try to. I've been working, and I did a video the other day on my YouTube. I always try new platforms, new solutions. I'm not afraid to fail. You always have to try. You don't know if you're going to fail unless you try. So I would say that's one thing about me. Like, I'll try. Like, it doesn't matter if it's successful or not. You have to try. So I've been trying new platforms. So getting back into using my YouTube channel. It was part of my graduate program, using YouTube to push out content. I also use Periscope for live events. And then I have a new platform that lets me go live on YouTube and lets me go live on Periscope while recording the video. So I have that if I want to go back and practice my editing skills.
Well, you brought up the concept of wearables, so let's just go ahead and jump into some new technologies, and we'll kind of maybe start with healthcare hardware technologies. And so what type of wearables are you seeing out there? Things for diabetics, things for CHF, what type of wearables?
I would say I see something that's been developing in Madrid for a while when it comes to diabetes. It's medical students, and one of them is a type 1 diabetic. And they've been working on an artificial pancreas and working on platforms for, children with type 1 diabetes, going through this whole saga. So I've been watching them for a while, and they've been going. The one that's really in my head, been stuck in my head for a minute, is when I was in Sitges, I met a company. It's called, if I'm saying correctly, Humana Medical. And I tried out, there is a video where they have a wearable where it's a sticker. And you put the sticker on, it has a couple of little sensors in it, and then another sticker on top to seal it. And it doesn't itch or anything. So I tried it for like 24 hours. You can shower in it, it works, and it does your vital signs. So to me, it's been stuck in my mind because I think of a lot of patients when I would work in the hospital would complain about the wires. Like, I can't move, I feel tied to the bed, or even people having a portable monitor, it's like the size of a brick that they have to carry around. Or if you're dealing with someone that maybe has Alzheimer's and you're taking care of them, and the cords can be confusing. So the fact that you can have just a sticker and that's it. So then you can monitor the patient on your, on your smartphone and see where they're going and see their vital signs. Also, people at home. When people get home sent with interrogators or sent home with certain monitors, like I felt something, like I felt like I had a little flutter, something that could capture it. So that's been on my mind that I find fascinating. And that was a company, they are actually in, sorry about that, they're in Malta. So I got to spend some time in Malta not that long ago, and they had a recent event there, their first Health 2.0. So every country is doing something really amazing. So I like to get on the ground and touch it and see it for myself and try it out. So I would say those are the two.
Yeah, you mentioned diabetes. If and maybe there's some out there already, but some patch type device that would give you real-time hemoglobin A1C readings.
A1C is huge, and everyone looks for that. The doctors,
yes.
insurance companies,
Absolutely.
especially if someone's borderline, and you can, catch them and be able to do some lifestyle changes and kind of bring them back. I think I saw a company recently, as I close my eyes and think about it, I think it's called Dario Health, and they're doing a small, almost like the size of a roll of quarters device that holds the device to puncture, the sticks to take, just to drop a blood test and using your smartphone, which I thought was kind of really, neat because diabetics have, such a big machine to take around, be able to take their blood sugar with something in their pocket. So that was something interesting I saw recently.
Well, and
but the A1C one, that would make a huge difference for a lot of people, especially people doing home care.
And, anything that can hook up to a smartphone, which are essentially powerful computers. So I've seen some pretty nice EKG monitors that hook up to smartphones, or a lot of things that can, just leverage the power of a smartphone.
Even patients, they're making stuff. I have a mini EKG machine. It's just a 3-lead that I can build a case for, and then be able to go into the system and monitor and record my vital signs. So there's a lot of people that are doing do-it-yourself in the last couple of years. A lot of makerspace, a lot of people creating their own projects and projects for other people, even like, kids that need limbs as they grow, making them Superman hands. So there's so much stuff that people are doing. So what I like to do is try to connect everybody and let, this party know there's other parties out there and that they exist. And, there's a lot of people that might have your solution. You just have to look beyond your back door.
Absolutely. Well, you also mentioned a few minutes ago mHealth, mobile health. Now, were you referring to telemedicine where providers in direct contact with remotely with a patient, or what were you referring to?
Mobile health, an example would be there is a woman's health app. They are out of Spain, out of Madrid, I believe, and they I think they have their U.S. base in New York, and they're really working with women understanding their own health care, their own bodies, what exercises to do, what things to look for, what to do before, during, and after childbirth, as you age as a woman, how your body changes and things you need to look for and be made aware of. So kind of moving, for some cultures, there's some shame in talking about your body and being aware of your body. So trying to get rid of that stigma and really make it into kind of like an interactive community with their app. So I find that kind of interesting that's going on. Also, going back to wearables, there's a gentleman in Birmingham, Mr. Wearables, or the wearable expert. So I follow him quite a bit, and we meet up and we talk sometimes. And I kind of see what he's doing when it comes to wearables and what's happening and what's out there. So I really, where people follow me, we kind of all follow each other and kind of monitor, see what each other's doing.
I'm glad you brought that up, Danielle. That is real power of social media. So whether somebody really, I don't want to say owns a space, but is really focused on space, whether it's being a patient advocate or wearables or whatever, they're going to be very close because they're ignoring everything else usually. They're just really focused on one aspect. So if you follow that individual, if anything starts to happen and you're following them, you'll know about it, early on.
And then I might find something that they don't know about, and then I'll share it with them. And so everyone kind of, it's a community. We were talking about telemedicine a minute ago. I'll have certain people that I'll follow for telemedicine. There's certain countries I follow.
Yes.
I follow their good governance, like what are they doing? How is the pay? What are the the companies, especially the ones that are in the UK, where there's one where it's a good example of a guy. He's a young guy. He's doing a business trip in the Middle East. He's from the UK. He falls sick before he goes. He still has to go on the business trip anyway, so gathers up everything. But he gets on the flight. He's halfway there, realizes he's got his medicine. So he calls his app. The doctor says, oh, yes, you have these symptoms. Okay, yes, you need this medication. And then they deliver the medication to his hotel room.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people I know, because I travel quite a bit, that are afraid to travel because of health issues. Maybe they're in a wheelchair, or they use a walker, or they need dialysis, or they have diabetes, and they have to do a lot of planning, before they go, like how are they going to get around. So some patient advocates that we meet in different countries, and they're social media ambassadors, and, they use a wheelchair. It's like, how do you get around? How do you get from this train stop to that stop and these different places, and all the planning involved, logistics. So, again, it's like working together as a community, sharing knowledge, sharing information. So before, people used to be kind of closed, and now it's really about collaboration, partnership. I have this, I'm going to share this with you. And that's kind of what my site's about, is just free information that's vetted by a clinician.
Sure. I can't believe it. Our conversation this morning is going to be 28 minutes, and we've almost gone 22 minutes, so it's just flown by. But there's some definite things I want to get your input on. So let's talk about blockchain a little bit.
Okay.
There's good use cases. There's bad use cases. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of money going into things that they shouldn't go into, but there's some reality there. Give me your thoughts on blockchain and healthcare.
I think it depends on the country. I like I said, in Estonia, it works really well, and I think a lot of times people don't really explain, what it is, and break it down to the lowest common denominator, to the people that actually inputting the information. So yes. We always say, like in the hospital, garbage in, garbage out. If the patient does something simple like bend their arm on the blood pressure cuff, which is normal and natural, it'll get an erroneous, possibly an erroneous blood pressure. So you have to have the system, you go in, delete it out, and someone that knows, like, oh, I have to delete this out, or I have to retake this, because if I don't, it's going to, mess up the longitudinal data. And so if you put bad information into the blockchain, it's very difficult to remove it. I do like, say, there's, I have to think of them, there's a British company, Digini, where all of your information, and the similar concept, all your information, whether it's social media, your healthcare, it's all your information, and they just use it like a funnel to go through to you. And that's kind of how I look at blockchain.
Yes.
There's only certain people that are touching it, is the best way to explain it, and not everybody involved in the blockchain is going to see or touch or have access to information. So if you don't have, say, the right person's name, and we struggle in the U.S. if someone has two last names, but it's quite common in other countries, you're not going to have the right person, therefore you're not going to have the right information. When you take someone like me, I travel a lot. I've lived in many different states, so every state I've lived in, I have a different healthcare record.
Yes.
When I have to get shots and I happen to be in Canada or some other country and I need to go in a hospital back in the U.S., that's another healthcare record. Even if I'm in Nevada or California, I'm two different people.
Yes.
There's no one system that talks to the other one. So in a sense, if you had all your medical records on the blockchain where it's not accessible to everyone, only accessible to people you want that have the key, then all your information is in one spot. I wrote a paper about this, about data portability, and so they have this issue in Europe. Say someone's, they're British and French, and they go back and forth, and they're type 1 diabetic. They're two different people. They have to carry their records back and forth. They have to have their records translated back and forth. So they did a pilot study when I was in Malta of several different countries where they're trying to share the information. So you're no longer, multiple people. You are one person. And say versus the U.S., right now I'm multiple different people in multiple different cities and states, and those systems talk together. So there's value in having all your information together in a longitudinal sequence. So that's where the relevance for blockchain, but it's like, how in the U.S. do you do that when we can't even communicate county to county?
Sure, right. Interoperability is almost a misnomer right now. Well, and there in healthcare, a lot of other different use cases, clinical research data, pharmaceutical provenance, supply chain, being able
supply chain, yes.
Yep. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So we'll be seeing a lot of that. We only have about 2 more minutes. Let me ask you a couple of things. How does someone follow you, and how does somebody get in touch with you? What are the best ways?
Well, I always joke when I meet people. I said, I'm not hiding. It's not too hard to find me. You can Google my name. But on my site, InnoNurse.info, all my pertinent information is there. On Twitter, it's InnoNurse. On Instagram, it's InnoNurse. Pretty much if you Google InnoNurse, you'll find me. So I would say my website's a good way to find me. All my information's there.
Okay, and spell that web address.
InnoNurse. So you think of it's innovation nursing. So INNO, then nurse.info.
Fantastic. And I know I've seen you that people can find you on LinkedIn. What other traveling do you have coming up in the next few months?
The next few months, I always have to look in the calendar. We are in July, so I'm planning for October right now. So I may be going, I'm in negotiations to go to Denmark, which I have spoken in the past, and they do a lot with AI, robotics, and drones. Last year I went, so I'm hoping to go back this year and see what they come up with. It's going to be in Odense, Denmark in October, so I'm working on possibly going to an event there.
We're totally out of time. So to those, our listeners, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. I offer a special salute to my guest today, Danielle. You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.